Alrighty, so we'd like to welcome you to our Hiring the Right Bookkeeper webinar today. Just a little bit of housekeeping. The recording that I just began will stay on throughout the entire presentation. We would suggest that you mute yourself when you're not speaking, and please make sure that your name shows up in the Zoom window, which it already does, so thank you very much for that. Throw questions into the chat, and Simeon and I will make sure that they get answered. And after the workshop, I'll make sure that you receive an email with contact information, links to resources that we discuss, as well as a copy of this presentation. So without further ado, I will pass it off to my colleague and microbusiness coach, or Simeon Geigel.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Just want to provide some brief information about our program in case it's of interest to you and you want to utilize our services. So the Micro Business Development Program is a statewide program that works with low to moderate income Vermonters to help them start or expand their business. And there's no cost for our services to those that meet our eligibility guidelines. And the guidelines are based on the number of people in the household versus the total household's income from all sources. And we have three counselors working at the CVOEO Micro Business Development Program Office, myself, Simeon Geigel, John Gergley, and Pacific Sangayuba. So feel free to connect with us if you would like to learn more about our services or determine if you qualify for our free business counseling services. Next, Sophia. Thank you. As I mentioned, microbusiness is a statewide program, so there's a microbusiness serving the where you live, depending on the counties that you live in. And so down in southern Vermont, we've got Brock covering Bennington and Rutland, Capstone Community Action covering Washington, Lamoille, East and West Orange counties. Mentioned my program, CVOEO, covering Addison, Chittenden, Franklin, and Grand Isle. NECA covering the Northeast Kingdom, including Caledonia, Essex, and Orleans counties. And finally, SEVCA, which covers Windham and Windsor counties. And you'll see here that these are the different counselors serving each of those regions, and this information is included in the packet of information that Sophia will send out after our recording. You can also go to mbdp.org and access this information the same way. So I do like to make a point of letting people know that we've got some great business development services in our region. In the Burlington area, we've got Burlington Business and Workforce Development Program, Center for Women in Enterprise, Mercy Connections, which includes the Women's Small Business Program, the Vermont SBDC, Small Business Administration, and Champlain Valley SCORE, being an acronym for Service Corps of Retired Executives. Most, if not all of these organizations provide one-on-one counseling as well as classes too. So there's plenty of opportunity to connect with folks to help you develop your business.
Alrighty.
Great. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Nakuma, and I'm looking forward to our subject today and what Nakuma has to share. So Nakuma, thank you so much for taking the time to share your knowledge and expertise with us, and I turn it over to you.
So much. I'm going to share my screen. This is different. Today we are talking about hiring the right bookkeeper for your business. Hi, my name is Nicole Paczewski. I've been doing bookkeeping business for over 2 years, and I hold a master's in accounting. The first section we're going to go over is the importance of having a bookkeeper for your business. Bookkeeper of a business has various roles, and is very critical to help manage the business finance records and ensuring there's accuracy in financial reporting. And these are a few of the main responsibilities a bookkeeper can have: recording financial transactions, managing account payables and receivables for a business, bank reconciliation, ensuring that the bank reflects what's going in and out of the bank is reflected in their financials, financial reporting. This shows how a business is doing. Can they pull reports for the business to ensure that they're making profit and how to move forward? Excuse me. They can also do payroll processing. That includes making the checks and paying the taxes for it. They maintain financial records. This can look saving receipts, ensuring all that is categorized and ready for auditing. Some also work on tax preparation, ensuring the business is ready and compliant for taxes. They also work on compliance and regulatory adherence to ensure the business is following what's correctly done. And they also can have some bookkeepers do an advisory role, and they can help the business and give advice on how to move forward. There are certain key qualities a bookkeeper should have. One of the most important is attention to detail. Bookkeeping is very detail-oriented work, and so they should be meticulous in keeping records and financial transaction, prevent errors that could lead to significant issues. So it's really important that the bookkeeper is able to focus and ensure everything's correct. They will be thoroughly reviewing different documents. They need to make sure the details align correctly and necessary for the information to be captured. If a transaction isn't present or there's an issue with transaction, it can throw off a lot of the books. Another thing a bookkeeper needs is strong organizational skills. They will be taking care of a lot of the financials and record keeping, such as accounts payables, account receivables, receipts. It's important they're able to file it in such a way, either online or physical, depending on the client's needs, the business's needs. I recommend both for my clients, to have a physical copy and an online copy. This way, there's always a backup. They also need to be really good at task management and deadlines. Some businesses, some taxes which they'll be paying require monthly or quarterly payments. And they also will have to pay, if they're doing accounts payable and accounts receivable, they need to make sure they're paying that within a certain time. So you need to make sure your bookkeeper has the capacity to do what the business needs at a timely manner. They also need to be proficient in accounting software. Accounting software is vary from business to business and the type of business you have. You need to ensure the bookkeeper you're hiring is proficient in the software that is needed for your particular business. I know most of us are familiar with QuickBooks and similar software such as that, but there are other ones out there. And so to ensure that the bookkeeper you're looking to hire has the knowledge needed to ensure your business financials are effectively done. And softwares continue to grow. And so one of the bookkeepers should be able to evolve with the software and tools they're using and to be able to help educate the business owner on the software also, so they are aware of what's happening in their books. One of the things bookkeepers need is a strong analytical skills. A bookkeeper ends up becoming a partner in the business. They help the business owners understand their financials and identify trends and discrepancies. This skill can help accurate reporting and make informed recommendations. A bookkeeper will present different reports and whatnot, and they should be able to help the business owner fully understand what they're presenting and it's how it affects the business. Um, like an income report, a profit and loss statement. Um, if a business owner is not familiar with those financials, a bookkeeper should be able to explain what's going on and how it works. They all should be good at problem solving. There may be financial discrepancies, software glitches, different fundings, and a bookkeeper should be able to research and learn and help inform the business on how to move forward. Another thing a bookkeeper should have good communication skills. They should be able to communicate financial information to management, clients, and other stakeholders if needed. They should be able to translate data into understandable terms. Um, they should also be able to collaborate well. They should be able to work well with other team members, accountants, managers, vendors, and foster a relationship. One of the key things about having a bookkeeper with you is ensuring that you can have open conversations with your bookkeeper because they do become a vital aspect of the business. Going back to compliancy, um, bookkeepers should have integrity and ethical standards. They should be trustworthy because they are handling a lot of private information of the business and sometimes of the employees. So you need to ensure that the business has the right contract to ensure that they will keep everything confidential and ethical. They also need to adhere to certain guidelines of professionalism so they can work on trust need being built to the clients and the employees that they're working with. Many bookkeepers will work, especially if you're working with a bookkeeper who is a contractor, they will have multiple clients. So they need to ensure that you clearly communicate the meeting deadlines you have for your bookkeeper and ensuring that they're doing the reporting payroll and tax submission within the deadline that you need them to be doing, while not compromising the accuracy and the work needed for bookkeeping. And they also should prioritize certain tasks and balance responsibilities and urgent requests. Go for it, Simon. I mean,
Sorry to interrupt, Nakuma, but is it okay if I jump in with a question?
yeah, yeah,
And
go for it, please.
all right, and Alice, if you have any questions so far, please feel free to jump in. Um, Nakuma, I'm wondering, can you and maybe you're going to get to this, but can you explain what the difference is between a bookkeeper and an accountant?
I'm not actually, I did not put that in there, but a bookkeeper normally works with creating the financials, and a bookkeeper can create a few suggestions, while an accountant will dive deeper and do more auditing aspects of it. They can do more projections out than a bookkeeper can. Bookkeepers will present what's currently happening and what they think the trend is. A lot of times, accountants will have a larger knowledge to predict further out how finances are done.
Okay, and from my experience, some bookkeepers will do tax preparation, some won't, but accountants will do taxes and they dive deeper into more complicated tax work as well. Is that correct?
They can, yeah. There are some bookkeepers who have EA certifications where they're enrolled agents, and so they're more specialized in a tax preparation. But accountants do tax preparation. Accountants will usually be the ones who will file the taxes for the business,
Hmm.
while bookkeepers are usually not the one that does the taxes for the business.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. And from my experience too, I don't know if you're going to get to this too, but bookkeepers can do as little or as much work as they're capable of providing, right? So, but you may not need everything. So I know a lot of it is sometimes based on one's budget, like how much can I afford to hire a bookkeeper for? Is that right? And how would what are some of the things that one would prioritize based on budget? If you're going to hire a bookkeeper, if you don't have a lot of money, if you can answer that or just give some suggestions or thoughts on that.
I think if a person does not have, as a business is starting off, it depends on if they have employees. If not, if you're a sole proprietor and you're solely yourself, or an LLC with maybe a few employees, the priority would be making sure the financials are lined up and ready to go. But as you expand your business and payroll comes in and sales tax comes in, at that point, I believe it'd be good to hire the whatever liabilities you'll have. It's really important that the bookkeeper can take care of it. That includes tax preparation.
Mhm.
But when you're a smaller business and you're a sole proprietor or LLC with one employee, the priority at that point is ensuring that your business is um, fully the financials are correct and they're ready for tax preparation and auditing. So
Okay.
it depends on the levels. The beginning, I would say focus on making sure your financials are ready for taxes. And as you grow, you may need a bookkeeper for larger things like sales tax, payroll tax, and payroll payments.
Hmm. I've also noticed that bookkeepers can also potentially help you calculate what your estimated taxes are, so you can
Mhm.
correctly estimate those taxes and pay them to the federal and state government. Is that true?
Yes. So the bookkeeper can create, so instead of the bookkeeper actually making the payment for you, they can help figure out the amount for you throughout the year as you're depending on the revenue you're receiving. They can
Hmm.
estimate if you make X amount, this much you pay. Um, and they can also help with paying payroll tax. They can also help with accounts payable if you have if you're a larger business and have a lot of bills to be paid, they can work with that. Or accounts receivable, uh, going after the clients, billing the clients, ensuring the clients pay. So it depends on what the business needs.
Sure. Okay. All right. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, no, please do. Anybody has any question, please interrupt.
And welcome, Katie.
Mhm. The bookkeeping needs to be adapt and flexible. The financial landscape is ever changing and the regulations are ever changing. LLCs are now created to have a new it's board of organization indicator, I believe it's called, a BOI.
Oh, the
And so bookkeepers,
BOIR, right? The
yeah,
BOI, yeah, the beneficial ownership report.
there you go, there you
Yep.
go. And those are, and so your bookkeeper needs to be able to keep up with the current regulations that are needed for the particular business. I mostly work with nonprofits and municipalities, so I don't deal with LLCs very often as a as my personal business. But it's very important that your bookkeeper keeps up with regulation, make sure you stay within regulation as you continue to grow and as things change. They also need to make sure that you're continuing to do professional development because everything is the landscape is constantly changing. Taxes are changing, and what is needed for each business is changing. So you need to ensure your bookkeeper is keeping up to make sure you continue to stay compliant. It's always really good to ask your bookkeeper questions and have an open conversation with them about things. If you hear something and have a question, it's really important that you speak to your bookkeeper about it. Is there any other questions for this section?
Nukuba, just out of curiosity, the next within your um talk here today, are you going to talk about what some of the qualities are to look for?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to ask.
And questions to ask.
Okay, great, perfect. Then I'll hold then
Yeah.
I'll hold mine. Thanks.
Key question to ask for interviews. An interview is really important to have a bookkeeper and have several interviews, not just the first person. It's important to, I don't want to use our shop around, but ensure that you're meeting with several bookkeepers to make sure they fit your landscape of your business and your needs. So there's a few key questions that are needed. Describing your experience and what kind of business you work with. A lot of bookkeepers will end up niching down into a particular uh, type of business, and it's important to know that if this bookkeeper that you're talking to has experience or similar experience to the type of business you're running. Every business is different, every niche is different, and every there'll be different things needed for them. If you're working with a nonprofit, there's grants that need to be accounted for and how to account for them. While if you're working for a sales-based business, you'll need to be able to understand sales tax and how to pay that. So it's very important to understand the experience your bookkeeper has had and what kind of specific software they've used to ensure that they're making the needs of your current business. A lot of people, a lot of smaller business will use Stripe or other type of online cash services to ensure the bookkeeper is is familiar with the program to make the sales, especially if you're working with online business and whatnot. It's also important to understand how they work with discrepancy in financial records. Are they able to if they come up with a discrepancy, you can ask them what their process is. Do they speak to you? Do they make the annotation in the record? And it's really important that you understand how their abilities to move forward when there is a discrepancy and what their process to deal with that is. Also, it's really important to speak to them about how they approach data and how they manage multiple projects. It's important to have clear um, timeline and projects for your bookkeeper so they're able to keep up with what your specific business needs. You can talk to your bookkeeper about this and see what services you'd like them to do and how they can actually handle it and what timeline would you need. Some business owners want monthly reports, other want quarterly reports, and you have to ensure that this is given to you as a owner of the business. And so you need to make sure you have clear deadlines. And can they meet these deadlines? Can this bookkeeper give you a monthly report? Can this bookkeeper give you a quarterly report? What works for you? What works for them? And if you can provide examples of work you've done prior, it's really important to make sure that it's very important that you and the bookkeeper mesh. And it's really important that you can see how work they've done prior and maybe get references, which is one of the questions I have on there. It's important that you can speak to the bookkeeper's experience. Is there any questions so far about these questions?
I just
Yes,
have
ma'am.
one. There's a box in the right that's been blocking some of the text. So I like the
Oh,
last,
really? Okay.
that's better. Could I just have the previous slide
Yeah,
for
definitely.
a moment?
Sorry. Yeah, I brought the video over so I could see you guys. I'm not staring at you this way. I didn't realize it's actually gonna mess the whole thing up.
Oh, thank you.
And Katie, don't
Yeah.
worry, you're going, Sophia's gonna email you this presentation, so you'll get this, just so you know.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um, Nakuma, so
yeah.
if you're, a lot of folks that I work with have no experience with a bookkeeper. So when they go to one, um, I think they're really looking to get additional information and learn what the bookkeeper can do. So I would imagine that that would be an important kind of part of the conversation to have is kind of allowing and letting the bookkeeper describe how they can help a startup business kind of get their bookkeeping going. And inform them in many cases about what are the important deadlines they need to be aware of and whatnot. But it would also be, I think, really appropriate for somebody that's kind of shopping around for a bookkeeper to kind of ask for that and ask how they work with startups, as they obviously they're going to really be relying on their guidance to kind of get started.
One of the things the way I run my bookkeeping interviews when I get a client on, I ask them what they're currently at, what their projection is, and how they're going. And most experienced bookkeepers will ask you where you're at, where do you see your business in a year, 3 years, and 5 years, and this way they can see what you need. If you currently need just reconciliation and tax prep for the first year, you're like, first year it's just going to be me. I plan on being a sole proprietor. And 3 years from now, I plan on doing this. And so many bookkeepers can sit there and speak to you about what your current needs are and how to move forward and where your taxes are due, whatnot. And so it's really important that you sit down with your whoever's your bookkeeper and speak to them about your business and how you see your business moving and growing. Some people want a bookkeeper and want to keep very small, whatnot. Others have this lavish plan of moving out to whatever. So when you're meeting with a bookkeeper, that's where the deadlines and approach time management comes in. You can say, this is what I expect, and the bookkeeper say, this is what you need, this is what I expect through every quarterly. If you're starting off brand new, quarterly reports, but as you grow and as you're making more income in and out, a monthly report will be needed. And so it's really important that you have an idea about your business and what your business goals are when you're looking for a bookkeeper, because that can say if this is going to be a short-term connection, because some bookkeepers you're going to keep for a year, reconcile, and other bookkeepers you may move forward on, change on. And so I think that's where it comes in, that conversation with the bookkeeper and understanding where your business is at. And so when you're talking about startups, some startups don't have this lavish plan of moving into like a multi-million-dollar type business. Some enjoy where they're at. Others will want bigger dreams, which is either both are great. And so it's important that you find a bookkeeper that can meet your needs now and then. And you may just say, okay, this bookkeeper will keep me until I make X amount of money and move forward. The bookkeeper may not want to be a day-to-day bookkeeper doing accounts payable and account receivables, paying your bills and going out to clients every day. And when you receive that point in your business, you may need to look for a new one. And so that's where the deadlines and the time management approach comes in. Do they currently fit your need now? Are you paying your bills monthly or are you paying them daily? And some bookkeepers maybe will do daily, and some may just choose to do monthly. And so I feel like that's where the conversation you need to be with several to see how that works. And actually also having different interviews with different bookkeepers, you start seeing how people present themselves and you start seeing the questions that are being asked, and it actually makes you, I think, as a business owner, look deeper as you're getting these questions by different bookkeepers to see what feels right for you.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, and I know I encourage people to meet with at least 3 bookkeepers, and I personally went through that experience, right? Because you really, if you kind of go through that process, shop around a little bit, that's helpful from a couple of different perspectives. One, you really do get kind of a crash course in bookkeeping, and since the focus is on your bookkeeping, and so I found through my experience that I could confirm what I heard from the other bookkeeper based on what the one that I was currently meeting with told me, and so I felt like I could trust that they could provide me with the correct information. But equally important was the personalities, right? It was clear to me who I wanted to work with and who I didn't want to work with from a personality perspective. So I do recommend that. And Nakuma, just so you know, that little box popped up again.
I don't know what's going on with my computer. Give me one second. This new Zoom is just being really weird when I move things around. Okay. There you go.
Yeah.
See, it's gone. Okay.
Yeah, now
Yeah, I'm trying to keep you guys in frame so I can see you while
sure.
doing this. And prior to this, you could do that and it wouldn't mess it. Updates are always fun.
Other questions? Alice, Katie?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry. Yeah, so just for my side, my business has been small and I've just managed to keep track of expenses and sales in a very simple way, not even really any complicated spreadsheets, but And I like reconciling things, going through that information. But at some point, I'm expecting to grow, and I know I'll need to have a more complicated or more developed system. Like, I don't even use QuickBooks now. Okay, so so then I have to really think about, yeah, how to move it forward. And what would you say, Nukuma, about when should I again, I'm waiting for more sales, and because I'm doing a relaunch of some things, but when would I sort of plan to talk with bookkeepers, and at the same time, when should I start to maybe even use something like QuickBooks?
I personally think having a software is very imperative to checking and balancing everything. Even if you're doing it yourself, there's a reason why it's there. It's a great way. It's great. You're able to pull reports. You're able to attach receipts, so you're prepared for taxes when taxes come.
Yeah.
What's your thing? Your count about having a bookkeeper when your revenue one allows for it. That's really important to ensure that you're not getting in debt for a bookkeeper unless you know the revenue is coming in. But you can get one soon. Let's say you're going to project to make 10,000 this year, let's say, and so you can get one in the beginning of the year to pay for it. But if you don't feel yourself as growing, it's not good to keep your business in debt for a bookkeeper. It's also really important to have a bookkeeper at the end of every year. You can hire a bookkeeper actually just to reconcile for the year for tax preparation purposes. So if you're not ready to have one throughout the year, you can do that way. The best time for if you want a year-long bookkeeper is when it starts becoming, I don't want to use unbearable, when it starts putting a strain on yourself for maintaining your record keeping, because you're trying to buy back your time to focus back onto your business. And that's why you hire a bookkeeper to ensure everything is well and you're able to work on your business more. If that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, part of it, I think from my side too, I don't know that I would want to start QuickBooks until I start working with a bookkeeper, just because I know I'll need some hand holding through that process. but that should be fine. I mean, some bookkeepers would be happy to help get me started with QuickBooks, right?
And there are people who hire a bookkeeper just to, who my friends call it like a VIP day. They'll hire you, have a 4-hour meeting with the bookkeeper. They set you up a QuickBook and they kind of walk you through it.
Yeah.
And so it kind of guides you to kind of maintain your own business, and they'll check in with the client every 3 months instead of paying a monthly fee to ensure their record keeping as well. And so that's also an option in the beginning stages of your business to ensure your record keeping is well and you're in QuickBooks and you're set up, because it is intimidating when you open it up and it's without the knowledge behind it. That's also an option with a bookkeeper in a very small business.
Yeah. All right. So it all hinges on how well I do in the future. So thank you.
I'll just, if you don't mind, I'll just chime in with a few observations as well. I think you could certainly begin to shop around if you use my previous example of connecting with 3 or so. That way you kind of have gone through that process, and that doesn't mean you're committing to working with them now, but you get to kind of suss them out a bit, if lack of a better way of putting it, and to learn when they might be able to kind of take you on, if in fact they are accepting new clients. I think, from a seasonality perspective, we're starting to kind of go into the bookkeeper accountant's kind of busy period of time. It's coming up. So, and that's usually when it hits people that they need to figure this stuff out. But so I guess if there's an ideal time to connect with, kind of beginning to look for a bookkeeper, and Nakuma, maybe you can confirm this, it might be after April and maybe before November, but that's just an estimate on my part, but that seems to make sense on what I've observed with bookkeepers and accountants. Would you agree with that, Nakuma?
Yeah, it depends. It does. If you're, especially if they're specialized in taxes, but if your bookkeeper is not specialized in taxes, most bookkeepers, our busy season is actually taking on clients November, December, January because everybody's preparing for taxes. So bookkeepers right now are usually opening up their bookkeepers who are not in who do not do tax prep or taxes actually are opening up the books to prepare businesses for taxes. So this is for a bookkeeper who just does financials. This is actually one of the busiest times of getting clients because people are like, oh, it's the end of the year. I need to figure this out. So it's a great time to look around. And you can actually have a meeting with the bookkeeper knowing you're not ready just to see what's going on with your business. And a lot of them are willing to talk. We understand small businesses.
Yeah. Okay, then here's another follow-up question.
Here's
I mean, yeah, in my experience, it has been helpful to actually work with somebody in a limited basis initially to see how it goes before making a full commitment. So like with my website, I worked with a variety of different people before I decided the right person for it. And there were some bumps in the road there. So what would be something I could start to do with a bookkeeper candidate, so a paying, something I would pay the person, but where, it would be a way of seeing whether we're a good fit or not.
Actually, I personally do a 3-month contract in the beginning to ensure that we are a good fit. Because just because you mesh on a 30-minute conversation doesn't mean you're going to mesh because you become as a bookkeeper, I become a partner in somebody's business.
Yeah.
And I want to ensure that we can work well together. So I actually do a initial 3-month contract with my clients where we can extend on the days like we will 3 months and it says we will dissipate without any issues or hopefully continue on, and then we have a thing if we continue past 3 months. But I think it's a quarter is a really good time to see if you guys work together and see if they're actually doing what you need to be done. Because that's where reports are done, whatnot. So I think a quarter, 3 months is good for a bookkeeper because it's enough time to see how your business is doing, a quarterly report if you're growing, and if you have conversation with them. Because you don't meet with a bookkeeper every week, so you're gonna meet with them 3 to 4 times by that time, so you can see if you have a good conversation, good rapport.
Yeah. And then this is what I could see doing because this year, I'll do what I've done the past years. I total up all my sales and expenses and try to categorize them. And then it's very simple. Give it to our financial accountant and they put it together in the taxes. But maybe then I could share that tally that I do for tax purposes with a bookkeeper, and that would be, what do you think? Could that be a good way of starting? I usually do that in January, say, and then with that, sharing that information with the potential bookkeeper to see how we could get it more systematically organized.
One of the questions a lot of bookkeepers will ask when they're hiring a client is how much the revenue is.
Yeah.
So depending on your revenues, usually depending on the transactions.
Yeah.
And so that's a good starting point to actually talk to a bookkeeper about where your revenue is at, where your expenses are.
Yeah.
Because it gives a kind of an idea about the type of business you're having.
Yeah.
With those simple questions. That is a good idea. I also personally like starting clients in the beginning of the first quarter is for me, because I want to, especially I want to stay with them throughout the year. I enjoy joining like quarter 4, quarter 1, because this way I can track and ensure that our systems that we're putting in place are working well as we move forward. That's my personal. I mean, I'll take anybody on at any point. But my personal preference, I like seeing that growth from January to December and seeing how we're working together. But a bookkeeper will take you in at any point in time.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Alice will also just mention, it's been my observation too, that bookkeepers, while they may have their preferences, they're willing and able to work with people who have different kinds of prefer different programs for accounting. Like people still use, pen and paper, so or use Excel. So I think it's practical to think about if you're going to get move into a software program, just remember there's always a learning curve that comes
Yeah.
with that. And so kind of building that in. And not only that, as I think we all know, when you're in business for yourself, you wear lots of different hats, and the bookkeeping accounting hat is one. And there's going to be certain terminology that is used in it. And so if you're not familiar with some of that terminology, you're by way of default, you're going to get a bit of a crash course in it when you start to work with a bookkeeper. So just be aware that there might be multiple learning curves when you're setting up the system and working with a bookkeeper, depending on what system you plan to use. Nakuma, to the degree that you can, and maybe you're going to get to this, so I don't mean to jump the gun on you, but what is what can one expect to pay for a bookkeeper? And also, if somebody is going to the bookkeeper as a new business, they really don't have their bookkeeping set up. What can they expect a bookkeeper will do to help get them set up on a bookkeeping system?
I'm not going to pricing. Pricing varies so much within
Okay.
the industry. There is no like base pricing in a
Hmm.
sense, you go to somewhere and there's like a base price. Bookkeeping varies tremendously
Hmm.
from $50. I've seen as low as $50 a month to $1,000 a month.
Hmm.
And so as I didn't put pricing in because it also varies a lot on the bookkeeper's experience, type of business you have, what you're expecting of them, if they're doing monthly reports, if they're doing, sales tax, all that can add and factor in. So I did not do that
That's
aspect.
okay. That's okay.
What was your second question?
Oh yeah. Actually, let me just follow up with that. But
Okay, go ahead.
um, that's understandable. You know that there's
Yeah.
obviously going to be a range, but I do think it's obvious and practical to ask the bookkeeper what they charge and what you can estimate the expenses will be based on your needs. I mean that.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that's one thing that's hard about creating like a baseline with bookkeeping because it varies on the services that each business needs. So many bookkeepers will have like a base service fee and have kind of like an add-on type
Mhm. Yeah.
thing
Okay.
depending on what you need. Um, and so that you can ask them about that. And that's one reason a lot of bookkeepers will start off, so you season bookkeeper will ask how much you make, what your plans are, where you're moving forward to see what services you currently have now and what you will need in a year, 3 years from now.
Mhm.
Um, and then you're
Okay.
talking about setup.
Yeah.
A lot of bookkeepers I know, and I enjoy that setup process, that going through charts of accounts, setting things up. And so it's a good most bookkeepers would be willing to do that. I think it's a really fun time to get to know your client because it's a lot of back and forth, a lot of communication. So that is one of the best times to actually get a bookkeeper when you're starting to set up. So you can set it up correctly for your particular business. Because when you get QuickBooks, Wave, whatever software, they give you a blank chart of accounts with 100 things in them that may not fit your particular business. And so it's really good to have a bookkeeper at that point in the beginning stages, even if you're just hiring for the setup so you can have it set up for your business. And that's actually a great way to actually start talking to a bookkeeper. You interview three bookkeepers, like, hey, I can pay you to set up my book to see if they're actually potential for a long term bookkeeper because you can see how the rapport is during that time.
Thank you.
Yeah. I also put it here on identifying red flags. Bookkeeping is one of those industries that there is no certification for. And though, so we want to make sure that when you're hiring a bookkeeper, you're hiring a bookkeeper that is knowledgeable for your business.
And Nakuma, that's different than accountants, right? Because
Yes.
CPAs have that's a designation.
Yeah. So accountants have a degree in accounting, and CPAs have an extra degree on top of that. A bookkeeper, there are courses for people to become bookkeepers, but you don't need the degree to call yourself a bookkeeper as you do when you're an accountant. You need to change. And so that's one of the things with bookkeeping. It's a very free market right now, which is great for people who have the knowledge. but it also can lead to people not always having the best experience with bookkeepers.
Thank you.
And a few of my clients have had that experience where they've hired a bookkeeper who seemed knowledgeable and realized it wasn't the best fit for them. One of the things with bookkeepers is, as all employment history, is talking about your client. I people will ask me how long I've been with my clients, how long I've been a bookkeeper, and for me, one of the red flags is if you notice a bookkeeper not being able to hold a client for a long period. Why are you not able to speak to a client, maintain a rapport with a client? That's very concerning. Also, you can also when the bookkeeper when you're having a conversation with the bookkeeper, you can also interview the bookkeeper. What do you plan to do with your business? How do you plan to grow in your business? What are you specializing in? What are your niches? Because as a bookkeeper, especially a newer bookkeeper, they will take on many clients in different ways to see what they enjoy, and maybe their trajectory is going to be something that's not your particular business model, and so you have to ensure that maybe they may leave a trajectory. So have a conversation with them about what their plan is with their business to ensure they fit well for you. Also, if there's an indication of instability, if they just as you're speaking to them and you're asking them questions, it doesn't seem cohesive. That's something you need to be worried about. Lack of specific answers or responses. Not all bookkeepers will be knowledgeable about everything, but if you're asking a question about reporting and they seem to hesitate, you're asking them questions and they just you don't feel right, or if you have a knowledge and it doesn't match your knowledge, as Simi was saying, how as you have different conversations with different bookkeepers, you'll kind of have a crash course in bookkeeping. And let's say you have two and one doesn't seem to be fitting, it's a really good indication that they may not be the best fit for you guys. You can also ask them about examples of their work, what they've worked in, how they've dealt with issues, and if they're unable to give you a good answer, that's also a big red flag. I know we always have this thought process that accountants and bookkeepers are these people who sit in a room all day and don't talk to you, but it's really important for us to have a good, conversation and communication, especially when most bookkeepers now work virtually. We're not going to business, we're not sitting there and they're cleaning, so they need to be able to communicate with you. And if you're having issues with communication with email responses, with setting up times, all that is a red flag if it's constantly being procrastinated to meet and talk about and follow through with things. We also need to make sure that their communication style fits your needs. I will set up business plans or like action plans with my clients, and though my brain may see it one way, I need to ensure that the way I'm setting it up to present to my client fits the way they see things too. You have to make sure your communication style meshes, whether it's financial reports. Even though people have QuickBooks reporting isn't always the easiest for people to understand. So you need to ensure that your bookkeeper can digest the information that comes out of QuickBooks into a way that is easy for the business owner to understand. A lot of times it's pulling the reports out of QuickBooks and setting up a different format to ensure it's read for everybody else. One of the biggest red flag is not providing references. If your bookkeeper's a near bookkeeper, they may not have the references, but if a bookkeeper said they've been in business for a year or so, they should have some references that you can point to and speak to. This is really important to ensure that they are doing what they're saying. Another thing is background checks. Depending on your business, you may ask to do a background check. It's usually at the cost of the employer or the contractor taking it in, but that may be something you want to do of your bookkeeper depending on your preference. And if they are not willing to do or allow you to speak to those people, that's a huge red flag, at least in my opinion, to see why aren't they willing to share how they're doing. Are there any questions on red flags?
I've got a few questions, but I'm going to defer
Sure.
to Katie and Alice first. If either one of you have questions you'd like to ask? No? Okay. So, Nakuma, would it be appropriate to ask them if they have insurance, and specifically professional insurance, like errors and omissions insurance?
It is not all bookkeepers have it, but it is something that's important to have. Um, I have it up to $1 million, and so my thing is, if I, for whatever reason, make an egregious mistake, which I hope never to do, but we are all human,
Mhm,
there's coverage for your business because my insurance covers your business more than anything.
mhm.
And so it is very important, especially when you're getting to higher numbers, to have the insurance policy for them.
And I think,
Yeah.
as going back to some of your slides and kind of red flags, I don't know if this would particularly be a red flag, but I think it, it would be important for somebody shopping around to be really aware of themselves and understand, what works best for them, so they can communicate that to the bookkeeper, to see if, that bookkeeper has the ability to customize their work based on the client's needs.
That's the reason I like doing a 3 months for myself, a 3 month thing with my client, because though I can send you a report and you may think you understand it, and then you don't realize it, and then I can create it differently and ensure that my style works with your style. And so a shorter term contract is really helpful for me to ensure that I am communicating effectively in more than just a month span.
Mhm, mhm.
Hey, did you have a question?
Yeah, back on the insurance, for accountants, and CPAs, they seem to be held at higher standards. Do
Mhm.
they automatically, as part of maintaining their credentials, is it to be assumed they are insured, or?
I don't believe so. So like even if you're working about professionalism, like in pharmacy, pharmacists, a lot of them will have their own private insurance to keep them safe. And so I think CPAs, their business may have insurance, but it's very different to having that insurance to personal insurance, especially if they're working as a sole proprietor. If you're hiring an accountant that's not working in a firm, they may not have their own insurance. But if they're working under LLC or partnership, it is assumed, but you can always still ask for it. It doesn't hurt to say. And it's also good to have on your file too. So God forbid something happens and communication is stopped between you and the accountant, you have the piece of paper of their insurance to reference. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but there have been cases where accountants just stop having or bookkeepers stop having communication with the client. And if you don't have their insurance information on your own file, there's no way for you to file a claim against them.
Okay. And this would be their professional insurance, correct?
Yeah, there's several versions, but errors and omission is the largest one for bookkeepers. So if I
Okay.
make an error, omission, knock on wood, doesn't happen. But if I do, and some people choose not to acknowledge their error and choose to stop communication, this way you, as a business owner, can move forward without that. It's a good way to protect yourself.
Yeah,
Any more
just to
questions?
reiterate what Nakuma said, I wouldn't assume, Katie. I'd ask. I mean, you shouldn't hesitate to ask that.
Yeah.
You're
And
protecting
that's a big red
yourself.
flag. If they're not willing to give you that information, like every year I have to renew my insurance. So I always email out my new insurance to my client saying, hey, I'm still covered type thing, but it's for them to have it on file too. So God forbid anything goes wrong, they have it on their end too.
And I'll also just say, obviously, we're talking about the concerns of finding a bookkeeper, and and red flags and signs to look for. But remember, it's a two-way street. Uh, they may ask you questions as well, and it does happen. But sometimes bookkeepers and accountants, they fire their clients, right? Because they are not doing what they need to do on their end for the bookkeeper to do what they need to do. I unfortunately have had some experiences with some folks that I've worked with, that were fired by their bookkeeper because they just never got them the information. The bookkeeper got really tired of chasing them around for the information. So just remember, it's a two-way street.
And that's why I think where the communication and meshing with your bookkeeper is very important. Because if you see your bookkeeper as a partner, you're more likely to give them the information they need. If you don't have that relationship with your bookkeeper and they're just another entity somewhere distant in the Zoom world, you're less likely to communicate with them. And that's why I think it's very important that you have a bookkeeper you rely on because you're more willing to work with them. And there's clients who do get fired. And it's not fun for either side at that point. And this is empowering your hiring decisions. It's very important, like we've talked about, understand your business needs and what your business is and how it will grow. That will help you empower you to ask the right questions to the bookkeeper. There's always you can look online also, but it's important to walk in with a few questions you want the bookkeeper to ask the bookkeeper for, because you're interviewing somebody. They're interviewing you to ensure that you're a good client for them, and you're interviewing them to ensure they mesh with your business. And so one of the things is requirement. A lot of people will go looking for a bookkeeper without knowing what they need from a bookkeeper. So I always say, put a couple of tasks. What would, if you were setting up a business, because eventually your business will grow, and all have, we've worked in businesses, an outline for what we're expected to do. Look up an outline that you expect your bookkeeper to do and walk in that way. Do you expect them to handle payroll? Do you expect them to do tax preparation? Or do you have an accountant for that for your business? Do you expect them to do reporting? Do you expect them to do sales tax, to pay your bills? Some people want to continue to pay their bills, their small business. Other ones want the bookkeeper to pay their bills. What do you want? What are the duties you want this bookkeeper to do before you start it? And this can vary and change as you continue growing your business. This isn't hard, set in stone. But it's important to have an idea of what you want your bookkeeper to do when you're starting the conversation with bookkeeping. And you can ask conversations like, I think would this fit underneath you, or would you do something else? And you can have that conversation during the interview, but have an idea of what you require from a bookkeeper. Define expectations. Some people want their bookkeeper on a daily basis calling conversation. Others want once a week. Others may want a full-time part-time as a W-2 employee. So difference with W-2 employee would they be hired and you'd be paying them a paycheck. A lot of them are freelance or contracted in, or I think we're more talking about contracted bookkeepers, so they're not actually employed within your business. So how involvement do you want? Do you want weekly meetings with them, bi-weekly meetings with them, monthly meetings with them? Some people just want a quick Loom video about their business reports, and that's sufficient for what is your expectation of this bookkeeper having the involvement in your business? Going back to involvement, when I take on a client, one of my big things to do is do weekly or bi-weekly meetings in the first 3 months to ensure that I'm kind of like hand holding the process very well. You may not need that if you're a smaller business, but if you're working in if you're a bigger business, or even if you're really nervous about hiring a bookkeeper, sometimes people just need that reassurance that the person is still on their side. So you can say, hey, can we schedule a 15-minute call once a week just to talk about things? See what you feel is right, and if the bookkeeper is right for you, they will fit your needs in to ensure this is a good process, because it is scary, for lack of a better term, to hire somebody to take over your finances when you've been doing your finances or you're new to a business. And so sometimes people need that hand holding and to create a good rapport with the bookkeeper. It's okay to ask, would you be willing to have weekly meetings with me until I get settled into this process? And even when you're a small business, it's really good to figure out like an SOP type way on how you're approaching and hiring a bookkeeper or even anybody. Because as you grow your business, you're going to hire people underneath you, whether W-2 or contract. So it's a great way to set up an interview questions you to ask your bookkeeper, how you would evaluate your bookkeeper. And this may be internally, just even as you as a sole proprietor, are they giving me the reports I need on time? Are they communicating effectively? Because I think sometimes when we get inundated with our business, we forget to do those checks. And 3 weeks, 3 months, 6 months have passed, and you've realized the communication isn't there and it's lacking. So I think it's important when you're starting to hire somebody new, no matter what, that you have these checks in place, even if it's just for yourself to check in on them. And also having the same questions for people is really important. So you create this level, 3 questions. You may start off with having interviewing all the bookkeepers and seeing how the conversation flows from there. And this way you have a baseline of where you're starting. If you're letting every bookkeeper take over the call, you may not have a baseline to see if they actually fit the needs of you. So having a few questions set up to always ask the same bookkeepers and see how they respond to those questions can help you decide which bookkeeper is best for you. This also works for accountants. I have a checklist of qualities you want. Like what do you think your bookkeeper should have? Do they fit these qualities? What questions do they have? If you see a red flag in a particular bookkeeper, I always annotate stuff down so I can ask the question that led to that red flag to the next bookkeeper to see if that continues, if there's a pattern, if this person, because a lot of times with conversations, they float. And so somebody may say something, it's like, well, how do we get to that point? Make sure you have an annotation of that so you can ask the next bookkeeper that question to see if that answer is different. I know a lot of us are sole proprietors, especially when we're starting off. And this is why involving a team member. A team member doesn't necessarily need to be a business person. It can be a confidant you have. A lot of times making a decision of having a bookkeeper seems very daunting. And so you can have the questions and actually meet with a friend and say, hey, look, I met with these 3 bookkeepers. These are what's happening. What do you think? Because it is a decision being made for business and it sometimes can feel very overwhelming. And so when we're talking about members, some people have a partnership when they're starting a new business, others don't. You can have a spouse, a friend, a grown child say, hey, come join me on these meetings. Just have a conversation with them. And they can pick up on things that you may not be picking up if you're so, it's nerve-wracking having a conversation the first time. Ask the bookkeeper if it's okay if somebody joins in with the meeting. And even if they're just there listening, it's helpful to have that team effort that you wouldn't have as a sole person. Through team members, it also has diverse perspective. If you have a friend that's in have a good day, have diverse perspective. One of my clients that I during my interview process had one of her friends jump on. She was like, I don't understand bookkeeping very well. My friend works in it. Do you mind if she joins the call? And so her friend was able to ask me more questions in depth than she would have been. And so I think it's really important to look at our network and see if we can have that conversation. And even if it's them not being able to be on the call, but having our notes and having them reflect on it, you don't have to make the decision on the interview. You can take some time off and think about it. You can also have post feedback review, sit down and speak to people about it. If you have somebody on the call, have a conversation with them afterwards and say, how do you think this person did? How do you like them? What do you feel about this? And even if you're the only person on the call, take 5 minutes and write down how you felt. Because you're going to have a meeting maybe every week with a new bookkeeper. You may not remember how you felt after the first meeting. So having a way to feedback and speak to and have notes to know how you felt about the first bookkeeper while you're making the decision is really important to reference back to. It's important to do reference checks, as we spoke about red flags, not people not willing to do the reference. It's really important to reach out, and they may give you 1 reference. You may ask 3 references depending on how big the business is. You can reference it and then have the same questions you have for as you reach out for every reference. Have the similar questions. A lot of times people will just send emails. Hey, I'm looking into working on with this bookkeeper. Can I ask you a few questions? They say yes. You send them a quick questionnaire. These are the few questions, and they can reference back. And this way, you can have good baseline on the person. But if you're sending different questions to each reference, that baseline will not be there because you're not getting the same feedback. Always ask targeted questions when you're asking for references. Like, is their work ethic? Are they reliable? How do you enjoy them? You know, is if you're industry specific and if you're doing payroll tax, sales tax, do they do your sales tax? Do they do your payroll tax? Do they do your payroll? How do they do it? Have they ever been late in paying X, Y, and Z? You know, are they consistently late paying your sales tax, or was it a emergency in their family? What's going on, and what are their track records in providing services for that particular reference? Always trust your instincts. If you feel it doesn't fit, it may not fit. I know a lot of people when they start looking for bookkeepers, they have this urgency to get a bookkeeper, even though it may not feel right that person. And it's really important that you trust your instincts with what you're doing in your business. And so if it doesn't feel mesh, it's okay. It's okay to feel your gut feeling during interviews. You can turn off interviews. If you're going through an interview and it doesn't work, and you don't feel like the conversation is flowing and they're not right for you, you don't have to stay on the call for the 30 minutes it was allotted. And so I feel like it takes empowerment of the business owner to say, like, I don't think we're a good fit for whatever reason. Trust what you're saying, trust your feeling. This is your business and you have the power to choose who you want in your business. And so it's really important to trust your instincts because you are the business owner. You also want to make sure they fit the culture of your business. If you're a business that works a lot with community, does your bookkeeper have the same values? If your bookkeeper is very money driven and very metric driven, which is fine, is that what your business is about though? And so you have to make sure your business fits your culture and your work ethic. They become a team member and they're a vital part of your business. So that ensuring that the bookkeeper fits your ideal and your vision of your business is really important. As I talked about earlier, trial period project tests. Some people will hire a bookkeeper to do what they call cleanup at the end of the year, and this way they get to see how the communication is, or how we were talking about creating charts of accounts with a bookkeeper. That's a good project test to have a communication with. And how do we work together, creating this back and forth communication in meetings? How do we fit? And doing a short-term project with them or a trial period is imperative to make sure that the relationship can last long term. And it may not, and that's fine. But you'd rather know in 3 months than in a full year. We're talking about performance valuations. This doesn't have to be as formal as important performance valuations as if you're working in a corporation, but it's important that the business owner takes control and ensures that the bookkeeper is doing what needs to be done. And a lot of times I see with business owners, they get busy, they're focused in their business, and they forget to check in the bookkeeper. And 3 months, 6 months into the thing, the bookkeeper has not maintained and continued what they've said they were going to do. And now they've been paying the bookkeeper 6 months. There's no job, there's no work to show from it. And now they're out a certain amount of money and they have to hire a new bookkeeper. So it's really important that the performance evaluation may not be formal, like, hey, let's have a meeting to do your performance evaluation. It's important that the business owner is checking to ensure the bookkeeper is doing what the bookkeeper said to do. And it's also important that the bookkeeper has continual learning. As this is probably going to be a lot of times this is small business first contract hire out. They're a sole proprietor, now they're hiring a bookkeeper, and this is their first big contract out. So it's important to sit down and reflect on what you're doing, how you're doing, how you gather the thing. And as we talked about a teammate, if you have a friend, spouse, sit down and have a conversation with them, how to improve it for the next time around. Hopefully you hire a bookkeeper and that bookkeeper will be with you for 5 years. But things happen. And so if you have feedback on how to how you can improve the flow of the hiring process. The next time around won't be as daunting as being. I feel like the first time you go out and hire somebody, it feels such a daunting experience. And so if you can flesh out how your hiring process works, it'll be easier when you start hiring employees or other contractors, social media contractors, whatever else. It's important to have that understanding of how to hire people. It's also important for the business owner to take ownership and keep up to date with business practices. I mean, there's so many things you can look up, and this way you can ensure your bookkeeper is keeping up with their aspect. You hope the bookkeeper is continually learning and growing, but it's important that the business owner has some idea of what's happening in the financial world to ensure the bookkeeper is continuing to do what the bookkeeper needs to do. And you do hire a bookkeeper to take that burden off, but as a business owner, it lays on you if something is not done, not on the bookkeeper. When you finalize a decision, um, I always think it's easier if you have somebody else with you helping you finalize a decision. If you do have a partner, friend, even a business partner, to reach out and have a conversation about what's happening. Even you can study it, learn them, take some time off, and come back and check it. It's important to take the time and space you need to ensure that the best candidate for you at that time is being the person you get. This can be done in two different ways. Sometimes the client is the one that's creating, the business owner is the one creating the offer. Sometimes the bookkeeper is the one creating the offer. So it just depends on how you're going to do it. Either way, once a decision is made, there needs to be a formal contract written. And that can be done online. It's clearing out the responsibilities you want the bookkeeper to do, monthly reports, quarterly reports, payroll, whatever it is. The compensation that's needed and the expectation should be clear cut on both sides. This way, if something goes wrong, there is a document to help protect the business owner and the bookkeeper. Yes, Simeon.
Thanks for taking my question, Nakuma. I just thought I'd jump in on this one because I can imagine that a lot of first-time business owners, when they are reaching out to a bookkeeper, they're really looking to the bookkeeper to guide the conversation and to inform the business owner. Okay, this is what you're going to need to do in the business, and this is how I can help you with that. So I can see that practically happening, but still the power remains with the client to make the decision, if that's how they want to work and if they want to hire the person to do that work. So I guess I just felt compelled to mention that as a practical. It's practically, I think, working that way often.
Yeah, what's interesting about doing contract work is sometimes the bookkeeper will be the one creating the contract and giving it out. Sometimes the client, the business creating the contract the other way. With contract work, it's depends kind of thing. I'm taught to, my business coach taught me to give the client the contract out, but I work with municipalities who can't do it that way. They have to give me the contract. But either way, we both sit down, we speak about responsibility, outline compensation. So formal offer doesn't have to be one-sided. It's not like you're creating or they're creating. It's a conversation. That's another great time to see if you actually mesh. And you can and until documents are signed, even after documents are signed, relationships can be severed. And so I feel like sometimes business owners go in and like, oh, we're so far into this, but I don't feel comfortable. I'm going to continue on. If you don't feel comfortable in the beginning, it's not necessarily going to be helpful to continue on. So it's important that you follow that gut feeling. And formal offers, it's a lot of back and forth conversation on what's needed. And the bookkeeper may carry that conversation, but it's important that the owner, business owner, the bookkeeper saying, I can only give you quarterly reports, and the business owner's like, but I want monthly reports. That's a conversation that needs to be had. and make sure you feel comfortable. And the bookkeeper should be hitting your needs, not their needs, because
Mhm.
you're the we're becoming a partner in your business, not you're not becoming a partner in our business. And so that's one thing with the formal offer. That's why clear outlines and responsibilities need to be out there. So when you're doing the performance evaluation, though it may not be as formal as a meeting with the bookkeeper, you're going back to the contract and saying, hey, you were supposed to do A, B, and C, and I only had A and C done. And have it in your calendar to check quarterly to ensure that they're continuing it on, because businesses do get busy. And by the time you realize it's not there, they haven't done any of this for 4 months, and now you're not sure what to do. And so
Mhm.
that's why I think it's important to have performance evaluations, though informal, if you're a sole proprietor, to ensure that they are doing the responsibilities they need, and they're hitting your expectation or exceeding the expectations you place on them.
Thank you.
Yeah. Are there any more questions?
Guess I jumped the gun on you on that one.
No, you're good. No, I actually like the conversation. You're fine.
Katie, you have any questions?
Like
Anything not clear?
the most daunting part is the hiring process.
Yeah, I think this is all really helpful information. Yeah, I I don't really have any lingering questions at this point.
That's okay. I don't mean to put pressure on you. I just want to give you an opportunity. I think practically too, it makes sense to ask how the bookkeeper or accountant bills, right? There's obviously the obvious work that you're asking them to do. Okay, based on what we have discussed, what is that going to cost? Um, when is payment due? But also don't forget too that you may be communicating different ways, and you might have a question, right, that you want to call or email them, and maybe that's just a quick 10-minute thing here or there, but practically speaking, it's still their time. So you want to understand how, if they're going to bill for those kinds of things, and at what point they would charge for communication outside of the agreed upon work. So I've noticed some folks say, yeah, if you have a quick question I can answer, no problem. I'm not going to charge you for that. Others might charge in 15-minute increments. So, you want to, it's money, right? And so you want to kind of control it and understand how you're going to be charged. So there are no surprises and no complicated feelings.
And some bookkeepers will charge by the hour, others charge more as a monthly fee, and it varies on bookkeeper. I prefer monthly fee. This way, the communication is I'm not sitting there nitpicking. Others enjoy that detail aspect of checking that out. And so it is very important that you understand that. And if you're going to pay the first of the month, are you paying, November the first of the month or November at the end of the month? Are you going to wait till the work is done first to get paid to pay them, or are you going to pay first and then they do? And that's something that needs to be negotiated also, and how that looks and whatnot. It is it is daunting, but it's not. A seasoned bookkeeper will help walk a newer business through this. And I think that's one aspect that is helpful to talk to several bookkeepers, because even if you're just interviewing them, that's a question you can ask. Like, do you get paid first? Do you do this? How do you do this? How do you expect your time? Can I send you emails throughout the time? Can we meet weekly? Can we meet bi-weekly? How does that work? Especially when you're starting off. I think it's important that you have more frequent meetings in the beginning and then lingered out, because in the beginning you're both having a learning curve of each other, and that can be something you ask. Can we do two 15-minute meetings? I email you a bunch of questions, and during the meeting we can have that conversation, because sometimes email answers aren't as sufficient as verbal answers are. And so I have a couple clients that will email me questions, and then we'll get on a call and we'll speak through all the questions. I'm like, don't email me as you get the questions, because you're going to forget by the time we meet in 2 weeks. And then we'll sit down and I'll work through them and we'll have these deeper conversations. And so it's also imperative that you speak to the bookkeeper, especially if it's your first bookkeeper, and explain to them this is the first time you're doing this. And so you're unsure, and they can help guide you. you're not insured, don't feel unempowered because you're not sure. A good bookkeeper will help guide you through it. And if you say, hey, you're my first one, or I haven't done this before, they'll help you guide you. We, like in any profession, we like teaching people and growing with people. And it's really cool to see a business that you've started that started with pretty much nothing grow into something amazing. Like that is such an accomplishment for, I feel, for us bookkeepers to see our businesses grow and thrive, even if they end up growing and thriving outside of our scope of practice. It's really cool to be like, hey, you're too big for me now. Like, go to the next person. It's a really cool accomplishment. And so I think it's important that newer business owners are okay to speak about that and say, hey, I may need a little bit of hand holding right now. Are you okay? Do you have the capacity to have several meetings with me? Do you have the capacity to jump on a call with me once a week or every other week? Those are important questions. As we talk about having questions set up for when you're meeting with the bookkeepers, is that something you feel we will need? And you can say, hey, we're going to do bi-weekly calls, and 2 months in, be like, I don't think I need these anymore. That's fine also. But you may want to anticipate more needs than needed because it's easier to pull back on needs than to add needs on when you're renegotiating. So I think it's really important that you sit there and kind of reflect. And if you have friends that are in businesses or even that work in corporations, ask them questions. We always think corporation and sole proprietorship are so far apart and they have no overlap, but they actually have a lot of overlap when it comes to bookkeeping and accounting. This is something, though it's expanded higher, it's important to have that conversation and say, hey, how does your business do this? How do you pay your bills as I do weekly, monthly? And you can have an idea about how you want to run your business. And it can always change. And that's another thing is when you're setting up meetings, sheet plan with your bookkeeper, a lot of times if you're going to stay on for a year, they'll do action plans. It's a plan that can ever evolve. And that's something a business needs to understand that you may have in quarter three, we're going to work on this, but your business may have changed. And it's okay to turn back to your bookkeeper, like, look, this trajectory has changed. Can we do this instead? I like to do this. And so your bookkeeper is a team member, but they are not the leader in the business. You're the leader. And it's important that you take control when needed and have that conversation with your bookkeeper, like, hey, this has changed, or my goals have changed. I thought 3 years from now I wanted to do this. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm heading this direction now. And they can help guide you. So whatever all our plans, and even when we do budgets, I always tell people budgets are ideas. They can always change. And so to ensure that you have that good communication with your bookkeeper and have that partnership mentality with them, they are a big partner in your business. So you can actually they can help you evolve and grow in your business, whatever direction you end up taking.
I'll also just chime in and say, practically speaking, if you're going to be reaching out to a bookkeeper for the first time and requesting an opportunity to sit down with them to get a sense about what they do and to get a sense about what your needs are, I think it's practical to just confirm if that is going to be a free consultation. Because you don't want to be surprised at the end if it's not. I mean, ideally, they would tell you if there would be a charge for that upfront in your initial communication, but why not just be clear about it from the get-go?
I agree. I don't know many bookkeepers that charge for it, but I know I have heard of a few. There are a few that do, and that's why I didn't cross my. But that's a good idea to make sure that it's a free consultation. It may be a 30-minute meeting, but it's important that because you don't want to pay for somebody you may not have a long conversation with. Because even if you go on and realize in 5 minutes they are not the bookkeeper for you, you still have to pay for that session. So that is a very important aspect. It's actually the end of my presentation. If there's any questions?
I don't. I think I've asked them as we've gone through things. So thank you, Nakuma, for taking the time to share this information, your perspective, and your expertise on this. We really do appreciate it. And we have another presentation coming up with you in the near future. I think Sophia, can you mention that?
Yeah, absolutely. So next Thursday at the same time, 10 a.m. to noon, Nakuma will be presenting on payroll. So if you're not already signed up, I encourage you to sign up. And if you'd like the link, I'd be happy to send it as well.
And that's November 14th, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Great. Katie, just want to double check before we all log off. Any other questions or comments,
Not
concerns?
to put you on the spot, but
Yeah. You're getting all of our attention right now.
I really appreciate it. This is wonderful information, and just thank you so much for this resource and all of this information.
Thank you. All right.